What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Points. Back to basics, but we are back with another episode as we've got a lot of Olympic volleyball to go over, as most of Team USA's teams on the beach side and the indoor volleyball side did great. But are they still alive, or have they been bounced? As the U.S. men's volleyball team, unfortunately, is out for the first time since 2000. They did not advance to the knockout round. Hear what I have to say about John Sproul and his team. Also, we've got two scheduled releases. One from Kentucky and one from Notre Dame in terms of women's volleyball. Both those teams are very promising when it comes to the up-and-coming season in their respective Power 5 conference. Finally, we have transfer news. Because I missed last week because of the 100th episode of Set Point and all the guests that I had, I'm going to do double duty of transfer portal news this week. So, here we go. Set up the net, hand me a volleyball, because I'm about to serve you some volleyball action here with Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. And apologies if I was pretty much up and down, if I said I wasn't going to go live, then I was going to go live. As of right now, April Ross and Alex Kleinman are playing in the quarterfinals in terms of the Olympic beach volleyball knockout round. And I was a little hesitant. I wanted to tune into that, but then again, I wanted to keep doing Set Point, and it's like, I can watch that at the same time. So here I am now. So without any further delay, let's get on into the volleyball action. But first, we have a word from our sponsor. iSports Radio's official sponsor is the Southern California Warriors semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get on film, to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow the Southern California Warriors on Twitter at SoCal Warriors, and you can follow them on Instagram at @SouthernCalifornia_Warriors. And then they're also on Facebook if you have that sort of thing, even though I think Facebook might be a little dated, but I digress. As thank you to the Southern California Warriors for being the official sponsor of all IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And you can follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. And you can follow them on Facebook by going to the search bar and typing in IE, then the word sports, and then the word radio. And you could also follow along the show by following the Twitter account at set_point.ie. And that'll pretty much have all your volleyball coverage for the most part, such as the Olympics, as we say hello to Adam Karnick in the chat room and Gina G. Thank you, too, for joining me, as they both said have a great show and an awesome show. And Adam says, do play-by-play during the show. He's referring to play-by-play of April Ross and Alex Kleinman's matchup. And Gina says, that's a tall task, but Teran is an all-star podcaster. Well, thank you, Gina. I wouldn't say all-star podcaster, but I'm trying. So, without any further delay, let's recap some volleyball action. So, we'll start with the women's indoor side now. because that was what I was up late at night last night for. So, Pool A and Pool B just concluded its pool play segment. So, Pool A basically was straightforward. Brazil just pretty much dominated everybody. They only dropped 3 sets overall, and they won 15, and they went a perfect 5-0 in pool play. So, they dominated Pool A. And then Serbia went 4-1, as they were just as good. The problem was they just ran to the buzzsaw that was Brazil. So Serbia was second with 4-1 with 12 points. South Korea was third, as they went 3-2, and they had 7 points. The Dominican Republic finished fourth, and they had 8 points, and they had a 2-3 record. So those 4 teams that I just mentioned are off to the knockout round. So pool play has 6 teams, and only 4 advance to the quarterfinals. And then the quarterfinals is basically win or go home. So it's basically like a oversized tournament. Now for Pool B, it was very complicated. So Pool B deserves a lot of talk and recognition, just because pool play was all over the place. Like, everyone expected the U.S. to pretty much dominate. Some people even had China looking to repeat as gold medal champions from the last time the Olympics were had in 2016. So, and then we had other up-and-comers such as Italy, Turkey, the Russian Olympic Committee, or Russia, because of what happened, which I'm not going to get into because we're not going to get into that. And then we had Argentina, which Argentina finished dead last, and bless their hearts, they unfortunately didn't win a set. They got swept in all of their matches. So I kind of feel bad for Argentina, but I digress. So last night, it was quite the intense little final day of pool play, as the United States, Italy, and Turkey were all 3-1 with 1 pool play match remaining. The U.S. can only win its pool if they win their match, and then ROC loses to Turkey. If Italy were to have won yesterday, then they get if Italy were to win, then Italy gets the top spot in Pool B. And then if ROC wins their pool play matchup and the U.S. defeats Italy, then they get the top spot in Pool B. So how it went down was the U.S. faced Italy, and I was actually on the call for this one via USRN. Also, got to give a big shout to Mike Pat of IE Sports Radio for tuning in. I definitely appreciate him, because considering he just came off of doing his show, Let's Whine About Sports. But the U.S.-Italy match was so intense. It had a lot of twists and turns to it, as Italy took the first set 25-21, and I was just thinking, this is not good, because the U.S. made the same mistakes that they did against the Russian Olympic Committee. They were a step behind when it came to off-speed kills from Italy. Their serving wasn't really on par. Their serve receive wasn't really the greatest, and everything just went awry for them in that first set. The second set was a complete turnaround, as they just rolled past Italy in that second set, 25-16. Now, the third set is where everything was just all over the place for the U.S. Early in the set, the U.S. lost one of its top players, Jordan Poulter, to a right foot injury. And how it happened was, she was going up for the block, and then when she landed on her foot awkwardly, and it kind of she kind of rolled her foot or rolled her ankle. It was almost the same injury as Jordan Thompson had back when the U.S. played the Russian Olympic Committee a couple days ago. So Jordan Poulter eventually could not return, and we don't know what her status is like. Like, she was actually in a wheelchair yesterday, and she just couldn't put any weight on that foot, and that really stunk. It's like, oh no. And she was a pretty darn good setter for the U.S. Through the first 4 pool play matches. So unfortunately, the U.S. lost her, and in came Micah Hancock, who actually wasn't as tall. She isn't as tall as Jordan Poulter, as she stands at 5'11", while Poulter is 6'2". And when she came in the game, she had a little setting jitters. She had pregame jitters because she didn't expect this to happen. Like, she didn't expect the top setter to get hurt, and Hancock eventually had to take over setting positions. So unfortunately, it didn't. At first, it didn't. It seemed like the U.S. was going to lose the third set, but then they went up 20-15 as they actually were stringing together a good amount of points. So everyone was thinking, okay, U.S. has got this, right? No, because Italy went on a 12-5 run, and they dodged 2 set points and took set number 3, 27-25. So the fact that the U.S. was without its starting setter, and they were already without their starting opposite, Jordan Thompson, who, like I said, she hurt her ankle against ROC, was just things that the U.S. did not want to see. And it looked like the U.S. was in trouble, right? Wrong. As the U.S. responded nicely by taking set number 4, 25-16, forcing a 5th set. And I'm just thinking, now that's a way to come back after losing a tough heartbreaker set 3. So, to the 5th set, the U.S. was down 3-2, but then they scored 4 straight points, and they led 6-3, and eventually they had set point at 14-9. However, give it credit to Italy. They had a lot of resilience, and they made sure they made the U.S. work for that victory, because the U.S. was making mistakes, they were hitting the ball out, and Italy was just tracking down their kill attempts and just digging them up. There were a lot of great rallies in that match for both teams, but Italy was doing all that it can to just dodge that match point. But Michelle Barch-Hackley was able to end the match with a kill off the block. That kill actually barely got a pinky of the defender, and if it doesn't get that pinky, then the U.S. doesn't win that set, and it's 14-13 going into the deeper part of set 5, and Italy starts to believe more. So the U.S. won set 5, 15-12, and they won the match 3-2. It was a very thrilling match, and for Micah Hancock to come in after the starting setter just went down and she managed to take control of the offense was quite impressive. There's a reason why she won 2 NCAA championships with Penn State, so I give all the credit in the world to Micah Hancock, because it's not easy being a second-string setter. It's kind of like being a backup quarterback. I kind of describe this as like Nick Foles and Carson Wentz when they were on the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's kind of my little spiel on that. So the next match after that was ROC versus Turkey. Turkey took the first set 25-21, but then ROC took the first set 25-21, but I give credit to Turkey. They stuck around quite nicely. They actually were trailing most of set 2, and then they just managed to come back and win the second set 25-23, and then the same thing occurred in set number 3. It almost was kind of like a carbon copy, except Turkey was very much in that set. The problem was they just couldn't shake ROC off their tails, but Turkey did win that third set 25-23, and I was watching this match, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen if ROC wins? They're going to have the same record as Italy and the U.S., and they're going to have the same number of points as the U.S. and Italy. And keep in mind, Italy defeated ROC, which defeated the U.S., which defeated Italy. So it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors thing. So to the fourth set, ROC was not in the mood to losing in 4 sets, as ROC took that fourth set 25-15. I was very flabbergasted on how they took that set. I'm like, now that is a way you respond. So to the 5th set, ROC led 3-1, and then to Turkey's credit, they were blocking the ball really well. They were serving tough, and they got the ball to their pin hitters, and they were just putting down kill after kill. And Adam says ROC because we can't call it Russia anymore. Yep, and that's for another story. But yeah, Russia is basically ROC. So just to clarify, they did something naughty a few years ago, and now they're called ROC as opposed to Russia. But I digress. So anyway, so back to Turkey. They were doing everything possible to get point after point after point. They actually reeled off 7 straight points to lead 8-3 at the side change. Then we fast forward to it being 10-7. Turkey, but it was 10-7, and then 2 of Turkey's players collided with one another, and I think one of the Turkey players accidentally rammed her head into the lip of one of the Turkey players. So it's kind of hard to describe, but 2 of the Turkey players were going for the ball, and then they both unfortunately weren't looking at one another, and then one of the players just rammed into the mouth of... It wasn't a hard hit, but it got to the point where one of the Turkey players was bleeding from the mouth, and there was lots of blood. Even the commentator was like, "Oh my goodness, I can't bear to look at that," or something like that. And he was like, "We're going to just switch this off we're going to turn the camera away." And I'm like, I like this announcer. I wasn't laughing at the injury, I was laughing at how the announcer was just reacting. I'm like, oh my god. And at that point, I'm thinking, oh my god, this is a momentum killer for Turkey, and this is probably going to go to ROC. But then the player that got hurt, who was like bleeding, got patched up, and she eventually came back in. It did cost Turkey a timeout, just because Turkey did actually call a timeout. They decided to call a timeout instead of just like playing it out, but it was a wise timeout, and eventually Turkey took the 5th set 15-10, which actually won them the match. It did give ROC 1 point, but because of that, because of tiebreaker, and since they and Turkey have the same record, Turkey has the tiebreaker over ROC. Meanwhile, the U.S. actually won Pool B because they had the tiebreaker over Italy. Yes, Italy and the U.S. had the same record and the same number of points, but the U.S. was able to win because they had beaten Italy previously. So the U.S. finishes first in Pool B, followed by Italy, who finished second. Then Turkey finished third, and then ROC finished fourth. So why that matters is because of seeding for the knockout round. So the quarterfinal will consist of Brazil versus ROC, Serbia versus Turkey, Italy versus South Korea, and the United States versus Dominican Republic. And to me, I think Pool B has probably one of the toughest gauntlets out there. I don't even think Brazil is safe, because ROC has some stud players. Like, ROC was able to sweep the United States, which was very impressive. I was downright impressed with them. Like, I didn't think that they would get swept, but ROC just did everything possible. Now, in the defense of the United States, they did lose Jordan Thompson, who was just having an outstanding tournament. She said on her Instagram page that she'll be back like later in the tournament, as she actually said that she wasn't going to miss time, but I guess Karch Karai, the head coach of Team USA, wanted to hold her out just because she didn't want to risk getting hurt even further. So I think that was a wise decision on Karch's part. So there's a reason why Karch Karai is a mastermind when it comes to volleyball. He had himself quite the decorated volleyball career, whether it was indoor and beach, but I digress. So, because ROC lost that match to Turkey, and because the United States defeated Italy, ROC gets the tough draw of facing Brazil. Now, while I think Brazil is a really tough team, I think ROC has a fair shot at defeating them. It's not the greatest chance in the world, but it's certainly not the worst chance. And honestly, ROC just has a lot of stud players. Like, they hit the ball well. They serve the ball really tough. Like, if you've seen an ROC women's volleyball match, you saw that they were just serving bullets. And they basically have heavy hitters, whether it was on the right side, the left side, or the middle. And they even bick the ball really well, which is basically hit it in the back row. So, all in all, ROC is probably a team that no one wants to face in the knockout round. And then you also have Turkey, which is resilient as heck, and it showed in their match against ROC, and they faced Serbia. Now, Serbia is, obviously they were second banana to Brazil in Pool A, But I will say this about Serbia: they're certainly not going to take it easy on Turkey. Turkey has had its big fair share of wins. They defeated China, which they beat them in 5 sets, and they beat ROC in 5 sets. And they also beat Argentina, but everyone beat Argentina in Pool B. But another thing to note about Turkey is that they took the U.S. to 5 sets as well. So I was very impressed with how Turkey played. And I'm not going to make any predictions, but considering it's kind of tough to make predictions when it comes to the Olympics. However, I wouldn't be surprised if Turkey gave Serbia a run for its money. Like, if I was a betting man and I want a guarantee, a guarantee of money, I'd probably say I'll take Turkey. But you never know with Serbia. Like, I didn't catch a whole lot of Pool A's matches. All I was just mainly focused on was kind of the U.S., but I digress. Then we have Italy taking on South Korea in the quarterfinals. This one's kind of self-explanatory. Italy had themselves quite the match yesterday. I don't like how they lost their final 2 games of pool play. Like, they were 3-0 going into their last pool play games. Unfortunately, they got swept by China, which I was very surprised they got swept by them, considering China was not good this Olympics. And then, to make matters worse, they lost to the United States in 5, which cost them the top spot in pool play. So, I'm certain Italy will take down South Korea, though. Like, I'm almost certain they will. I just don't see how Italy, that gobs of talent, loses to South Korea. I'm not trying to bash South Korea or anything, but Italy just has well-timed pin hitters, and they run a 6-2 offense as they run 2 setters, and they work really hard to keep that ball in play. Like yesterday when they took on the U.S., they were just making sure that ball did not hit the floor. So it wouldn't surprise me if Italy was somewhat of a dark horse. And then lastly, we have the United States as they take on the Dominican Republic. Again, this is kind of self-explanatory for the Dominican Republic versus the U.S. I think despite being without their starting setter and, you don't even know what's going to happen with Jordan Poulter, and we don't know what's going to happen with Jordan Thompson. So I imagine the U.S. should win tomorrow, but if they at least have Jordan Thompson, they should be in good shape. Annie Drews did a great job filling in for her on the right side, and Micah Hancock was phenomenal when it came to the setter position. It took her a little while to get her going, but again, when you lose a player such as Jordan Poulter, who's done an outstanding job, it's really hard to get your mind corrected and get your mind prepared, because you're coming in off the bench to fill in for the toughest position, in my opinion, when it comes to volleyball. Like, setter is probably the most important position of the sport. It's almost like quarterback. You have to master it, and you can't master it overnight. It takes time, dedication, and persistence. Like I said, it's kind of like the scenario of when Carson Wentz tore his ACL for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Nick Foles came in and wound up winning it all for them. So, who knows? Maybe we could see the same thing for Micah Hancock and the United States. I don't know. Food for thought. So, that's pretty much the quarterfinal matchups. Again, I'm not going to make predictions, just because after seeing pool play happening, and after seeing all those talented teams from Pool B, I can't really predict a clear-cut winner. Like, you have the U.S. who's the favorite to win it all, but with Jordan Poulter and Jordan Thompson questionable, we don't even know if Jordan Poulter is out, or if she's out for the rest of the Olympics, or if she's just out for a few days. The knockout round is tomorrow. The quarterfinals are tomorrow, and then I imagine the semifinals are Thursday, and then the finals and bronze medal match are Saturday. So Poulter probably doesn't have too much time to heal, which really stinks. So Micah Hancock's going to really have to take the reins on the U.S. offense. And it really sucks that this team, who did really well in the Volleyball Nations League, has to deal with these injuries at the worst time. So, but again, this is all part of sports, and unfortunately, you can't. It's not like Madden or NBA 2K where you could just turn off injuries. Like, sports has its risks, and unfortunately, injuries are part of them. So we'll see. But I'm excited for the knockout round. Like I said, the knockout round is tomorrow, and I hope for the U.S.'s sake they could finally break through and get that gold medal that they've been waiting for. So there's that for the women. All right, now we'll jump to the men's side of things. So the men's side of things, let's just say the U.S. wasn't so lucky when it came to the men's side. As in Pool A, we had Poland and Italy tying for first with 4 wins and 1 loss, while Italy also had 4 wins and 1 loss. Poland had more points, however, as they had 13 points as opposed to Italy's 11. Japan had 8 points and finished 3-2, which was good for third in Pool A. And then Canada finished fourth as they had 7 points and they had 2 wins and 3 losses. Iran also finished tied for fourth, but since they had fewer points than Canada, they unfortunately could not advance to the knockout round. So there was that. Then for Pool E, we had the Russian Olympic Committee finishing first in Pool B with a record of 4-1. Surprisingly, they finished 4-1, which is absolutely amazing. They even finished higher than Brazil, which tied for first in Pool B at 4-1. However, Brazil had 10 points, so unfortunately for Brazil, they could not surpass ROC. Then third was Argentina, who had 8 points and finished with a record of 3-2. And then lastly, we had France finishing in fourth with a record of 2-3 with 8 points. Now, on the outside looking in was the United States, which, unfortunately for them, they finished 2-3, but they had 6 points. So, I believe the tiebreakers go points, then record. I believe it goes records, then points, then head-to-head. And then, I guess, sets won, and then sets lost, and then points for, points against, etc., etc. So for the United States, this marks the first time since, I want to say 2000, I'm just going to confirm this. Yeah, since 2000, which was the Sydney Olympics, that they are not advancing to the knockout round, which was very tough for them. Like, I personally think that the U.S. had underrated talent. The problem was that they faced such stiff competition. Like, Brazil, they lost in 4 sets. ROC, which is one of the matches that I saw, they lost to them in 4 sets. France, they swept. Tunisia, which only had 1 point and which went winless, they swept. And then Argentina, they wound up getting swept in the last pool play game. Had the U.S. won that game, they would have for sure been in the knockout round. But unfortunately, the U.S. lost in straight sets, which was quite the bummer. So it really is going to feel weird not seeing the U.S. in the knockout round. And it's tough because all those players who had worked hard for this moment now see their gold medal chances or any medal chance go up in smoke, which again, it really sucks for them. And even John Speraw, the head coach, was saddened, and he even was emotional after the loss. During an interview, he said, "It's hard. It's been a tough year, a tough 18 months, and to get here, gosh, I wish we played better volleyball, but we didn't. They played hard at the end, and that's what I told them." And he's referring to his team when he says they played hard at the end, and I told them. So it really is a bummer, and again, for any team that does not make the knockout round or does not make the preliminaries, it's just saddening. And for the U.S., I know a few of those guys on the team, such as TJ DeFalco. It really stinks because they had to go through COVID, and they didn't have the Olympics last year, and to find out they fell short just because of a tiebreaker system, which was points first, then head-to-head, it's heartbreaking. And Spera also said in that recent interview that if they had gotten to the knockout round, they probably could have medaled. I don't doubt that, just because they had been in a very brutal group in terms of pool play. Like, they had to face Brazil and the Russian Olympic Committee and Argentina, and those weren't easy matches. Like, against ROC, the U.S. unfortunately lost by the thinnest of margins. Like, all the sets that they lost were very close, and I think 2 of them were decided by, like, 2 points, which, that just rubs salt into the wound. And I feel if the U.S., I totally agree with Spera. I think if the U.S. does make the knockout round, I think they can medal, because, like I said, when it comes to the Olympics, anything is possible. Anything. And it's a whole different animal when it comes to the knockout round. So for me, I feel exactly what John Spera is trying to say, and honestly, I think they could have actually medaled, and I hope that people don't give them any guff. I hope they don't, like, troll them like most people did, but it just really stinks. Like, it's a bummer. It's an absolute bummer that they failed to make the knockout round. So life goes on, and I hate to say that. I hate to say that in a nonchalant way, but life does go on, and they'll be back on this big stage. Like, I was thinking about, like, going on, like, a little irate on them, or not irate on them, but the fact that they pushed Argentina to the limit, like, they didn't get blown out. Like, I think their sets were decided by 5 or less points. Unfortunately, Argentina just got the better of the U.S., and that's just how it is. So it sucks, but again, I think most of those players are going to be back on the big stage, and personally, I think that their legacy is just beginning. So that's going to be that for the indoor... Actually, no. That's not it for the indoor men's volleyball matchups. So when it comes to the knockout round, we will have Poland taking on France, Italy taking on Argentina, Japan taking on Brazil, and ROC taking on Canada. I wouldn't be shocked if Brazil or ROC got to the final. If not, maybe both those teams. Italy is also good, as well as Poland. Like, I think between those 4 teams, they can make it to the knockout round. Not that I'm doubting Japan, Canada, France, or Argentina. I just think ROC and Brazil had themselves quite the intense pool play. Same with Poland and Italy. But it all depends on which players show up and which team makes the fewer errors. Because like I said, I think winning the gold medal, or medaling in general, is going to be wide open. So I can't wait to see what happens in the knockout round. So that's going to do it for the indoor side of things. Now let's jump to the beach side of things. So a little update on April Ross and Alex Kleinman. They took the first set against Germany. I kind of forgot who they were playing, which is my bad. Oops. Anyway, looking back on it, they are currently playing. It doesn't even say. Gosh dang it! But they're playing Laura Ludwig and Margarita Kozuch as April Ross and Alex Kleinman took the first set of that match, and the winner goes on to the quarterfinal. Unfortunately for the U.S., there's good news and bad news when it comes to USA Beach Volleyball. The good news is all 4 of their teams made the knockout round, which was quite impressive. Phil Dalhauser and Nick Lucena made the quarterfinal. Tri Bourne and Nick Gibb made the quarterfinal. April Ross and Alex Kleinman made they made the knockout round, the Sweet 16. as well as Phil Dalhouser, Nick Lucena, and Tri Bourne and Taylor Crabb. And also Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clace made the knockout round as well. The bad news is 3 of those 4 teams got eliminated in the first round as unfortunately Crabb and Gibb fell short to the pair for Germany, Clemens Wickler and Julius Toll. And it was Jake Gibb and Tri Bourne that fell short. So, unfortunately, they were out in the first round of the knockout round. And then Kelly Clace and Sarah Sponsel fell in the quarterfinals to a very tough pair from Canada. I'll be getting into that in a little bit. And then Phil Dalhouser and Nick Lucena both lost in their matchup to the number one team in the nation, as they lost to a very talented pair from Qatar. And then afterward, Phil Dalhouser announced that he is retiring from... I want to say he's retiring from Olympic beach volleyball. I think he's still going to be a part of the AVP scene. So he had himself quite the run, honestly. And I remember he got gold in the 2008 Olympics. That was a thing right there. And he also was named I want to say he was named like the champion of something. The 2007 world champion, and he's a 4-time Olympian. So those were Phil Dalhouser's accolades when it came to the Olympics and being a world champion. And he's still going to kick some butt when it comes to the AVP. So I wish Mr. Dalhouser the best, and I can't wait to see him hopefully dominate. But for right now, he will ride off into the sunset. But at least he made the knockout round, and and they were able to give their opponent a battle to remember, as Nicholas Capagrosso and Julian Amato. Actually, no, that was one of their pool play matches. Trying to find their knockout round match. So, regardless, Phil Dalhouser and Nick Lucena lost to Ahmed Twan and Sheriff Yunus, which they lost to them in 3 sets. All of the pairs lost in 3 sets. Kelly Clace and Sarah Sponsel lost in 3 sets. Dalhouser and Lucena lost in 3 sets. And Gibb and Bourne lost in 3 sets. Which is tough. Losing a third set in 3 sets is it's heartbreaking, but at the same time, it shows that you gave it your all, and you basically didn't back down from the challenge, especially Dalhouser and Lucena. They were playing the number 1 team in the nation, and they almost beat them. Unfortunately, almost doesn't cut it, so there's that. Now, the knockout round matchup, or the round of 16 match that Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clace lost to, was a very talented Canadian team against Brandy Wilkerson and Heather Bansley of Canada. Now, at the first set, Clace and Sponsel took, which wasn't too surprising. The second set, Wilkerson and Bansley took. Now, the third set was very, very controversial. So, let's fast forward to 12-11 in favor of Wilkerson and Bansley. So, one of the hitting attempts from Sponsel Clace, I think it was Sarah Sponsel that hit the ball. The ball actually was ruled out, and I think it was ruled in at first, and then there was a challenge, an official's challenge. Like, officials went back to the replay to review the point, just because they wanted to get the point correct. And according to an outside source, one of the technical referees said that he accidentally gave the point to Sponsel and Clace instead of Wilkerson and Bansley. So they took the point away from Sponsel and Clace and gave it to Wilkerson and Bansley. And I look back on this little replay, and the ball looks like it's barely out. But then if you look a little closely, you look at the sand that is rising on top of the tape, which it couldn't be caused like that unless the ball hits the line. So I actually posted this on my Set Point Twitter account, where I said, in the crucial third set between Sponsel, Clace, and Wilkerson-Branley, this ball was called out on Sponsel and Clace, and the point was awarded to Wilkerson and Bansley. And then I asked, what do you think? Was it out or was it in? And then I said at first it was barely out by less than an inch. And then everyone said that it was definitely in, that the sand on the tape at the bottom frame flies up, and only contact with the tape can cause that. And I said, I never would have thought of that. And I pretty much said, that's a very valid point. And everyone that replied, I appreciate you replying, said that it was in. And one person said, per the rules, you can't challenge a challenge, which I basically agreed, and that's totally fine. And then everyone said it caught the very edge of the line, and then one person pretty much said the exact same thing, and then someone else said in. So everyone and the majority was in, and I feel so bad for Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clace, just because it's tough to lose off of that call, because eventually the set was 14-11, and God bless Clace and Sponsel. They got the set to 14-13, but they lost on the last point. Now, if they take that point, and then everything still plays out with Wilkerson and Bansley taking the next point, that's 13-12. Then if Sponsel and Clace take the next 2 points, it's 14-13 in favor of Sponsel and Clace. And if Wilkerson and Bansley take the next point, it's 14-14. And that's if everything still plays out the way it is played out. But we'll never know, and this could be a possible 30-for-30 event where in or out, or maybe we could call it in and out. But I digress. But that is a tough way to go out if you are Sarah Sponsel and Kelly Clace, especially since you worked hard. However, I did also hear that Sponsel and Clace were up 7-1, and they unfortunately couldn't hold on. Now, my thing is that how could you go up 7-1 and fail to close the deal? I honestly think that it was experience. You could also say that the call was a crucial one. However, if you're up 7-1 and you're not closing it out, you don't deserve to win. I'm not trying to knock Kelly Clace and Sarah Sponsel. I think they did a phenomenal job, and the fact that they were the youngest pair in the whole Olympics speaks to high volumes of how bright their future is. Unfortunately, they just fell just short, and I really wanted to see them do good. And I even was hoping they'd get to face April Ross and Alex Kleinman in possibly the gold medal match. So, unfortunately, it didn't happen, and sorry about that. And that was how their run ended. So, I'm hoping set 2 goes the way of Kleinman and Alex. We'll actually take a look to see what's happening with the action. I'm going to give y'all a quick little update because I'm a nice guy. And let's see what happens. And it's on a commercial break. It says coverage to resume shortly. Thanks, NBC. I appreciate you, man. I'll find a way to get y'all an update. Because I don't want to wait for a Twitter update. I don't have the time. And we got to move on, just because we have a lot more to talk about, because, volleyball time is money, so yeah, I'll try to get y'all the update, but I have as for the opponent that April Ross and Alex Kleinman are facing, this pair from Germany is really tough, and honestly, It really is. They really are. And I want to say it was one of the pairs. Laura Ludwig won the gold medal with someone else back, I think it was in the 2016 Olympics, which that was the year April Ross finished with bronze and whatnot. So there's that right there. So that just speaks to high volumes that anyone can win any event, and nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed, as Charles Barkley would say. I would do it a much more emphatic voice, but I won't. And I'm not finding it. All right, let's see. Live. I will get you all the update. I refuse to give up. Like quitters never win, and winners never quit. That's my rule of thumb. So, and it's not giving me an update. I'm just about ready to just give up on this. All right, so I guess I'm not going to be getting an update anytime soon, which is really saddening. I'm really drawing my patience thin here, so on that note, let's go over some. Actually, no, we'll save the transfer news for the second half of the show. So let's actually go to a schedule release where we'll talk some Kentucky volleyball, as they just recently released their season. Their schedule was released, I think it was last Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. So their first matchup will be a scrimmage against Western Kentucky. So that's going to be an exhibition match or a scrimmage. So there's that. Then they have the Dayton tournament, where they'll be playing at the University of Dayton. Their first match of the season will be against Texas State. That's going to be at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so 7:30 a.m. Pacific Time, so that kind of sucks, but I digress. And then later that day, Kentucky takes on Dayton, which made the NCAA tournament last year. Same with Texas State. And then Kentucky, on Saturday, August 28th, they take on Cincinnati. Then Kentucky has their own tournament called the Bluegrass Battle, as Kentucky takes on Northern Iowa in their first matchup at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, they take on Creighton, which made the NCAA tournament. And then also on Saturday, Kentucky takes on USC or Southern California at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm looking forward to that USC-Kentucky matchup. It's the battle of a team that missed the NCAA tournament because of everything that happened with COVID versus the reigning NCAA champions. And I think USC is going to be much more talented than they were last year. Like, they've got some reinforcements. Anyway, so some other noteworthy matchups for Kentucky, because they have a lot of noteworthy matchups. For starters, on Friday, September 10th, they play at Wisconsin at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's going to be a fun matchup for Kentucky and Wisconsin, considering that's the matchup that was the NCAA final that never was, considering Texas beat Wisconsin in straight sets in the semifinals. Then, the day after, Kentucky still hits the road to take on Marquette, which Marquette is an under-the-radar team. Like, they could have made the NCAA tournament, but they lost in the finals of their conference tournament. I think it was the Big East tournament to Creighton. So that's going to be another marquee matchup. Then on Wednesday, September 15th, Kentucky will head back home to Kentucky, but they'll be heading down to Louisville to take on the University of Louisville. That's going to be a 7 p.m. Eastern Time start, and that's going to be a very fun matchup. ACC versus SEC, and it's also a neighboring matchup. I am very excited for that matchup. Like, Kentucky is taking on some big-time schools. Like, this is nowhere near an easy schedule. Like, the only few walks in the park I think they'll have is probably Iowa and maybe Cincinnati. We'll see, though. And then on September 19th, which is a Sunday, Kentucky will head back home to Lexington to take on Stanford. So there's that little matchup. So there's that matchup, and that's their last non-conference matchup. Then Kentucky kicks off conference play at home against Missouri. That's a home matchup, and that's going to be slated for 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Then on September 29th, which is a Wednesday, Kentucky takes on Ole Miss in Oxford, and then the week after, Kentucky will play Mississippi State at its humble abode in Lexington. Then after that, Kentucky plays Alabama on Saturday, October 9th. Then they have a 2-game swing on Thursday, October 14th, and Friday, October 15th against LSU. Then next Friday on October 22nd and Saturday, October 23rd, Kentucky plays Arkansas at home. That's going to be a fun little matchup. And then their next 3 matchups are going to be on the road as Kentucky plays at Tennessee, which will be on Wednesday, October 27th. Then following that matchup, Kentucky will still stay on the road to take on the University of South Carolina at South Carolina on Thursday, November 4th and Friday, November 5th. Then on Wednesday, November 10th, Kentucky will head back home to take on Georgia, and then a few days after that on Saturday and Sunday, November 13th and 14th, Kentucky will take on Texas A&M. Then on Saturday, November 20th, Kentucky will play at Auburn on Saturday and Sunday. And closing out their season is probably the best matchup for last. Kentucky heading back home to Lexington to take on the University of Florida on November 26th, which is a Friday, and Saturday, November 27th. So I'm glad they kept the best matchup for last against Florida. I kind of wish they'd faced Tennessee twice, considering that is kind of their rival matchup. I kind of think they should have swapped LSU, Arkansas, South Carolina, A&M, and Auburn and Florida are all good matchups. I think they should have only had one matchup against Auburn and then 2 matchups against Tennessee. I don't know. But that's Kentucky's schedule in a nutshell. I think Kentucky still can do good this year. Yes, they don't have the talent like last year. Like they did lose Avery Skinner, but I think their team is going to be quite fun this season. And their future looks bright, as Vinny Hardy and Terry Brown said last week when I had them on as guests. So the future looks bright for Kentucky, and I don't think anyone is going to want to take them down in the SEC. I think there's only one team that's going to possibly beat them and has a good chance at beating them, and that's probably Florida, but even I don't think they can beat them. So anyway, next schedule release is Notre Dame, and they have quite the fun schedule. So their first matchup is in the Golden Dome Invitational, which is going to be their self-proclaimed tournament. Their first matchup is against Western Kentucky, which made the Sweet 16. That's a good little first matchup of the season, as Notre Dame plays Western Kentucky at 7 p.m. I imagine that's going to be in Eastern Time, but I won't even read the times. So August 27th, Notre Dame plays Western Kentucky at home, and then on August 28th, Notre Dame plays the University of Oakland and the University of Loyola of Chicago. Then once again, they'll still stay at home in South Bend for the Shamrock Invitational, as Notre Dame plays Bowling Green on September 3rd, and then on September 4th, they'll play Cincinnati. And then after that, they'll play the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee on September 5th. Then on September 11th, Notre Dame will play Arizona at the University of Texas, so that's going to be a nice little Pac-12 versus ACC matchup. But the big matchup for Notre Dame is when they play the University of Texas on September 12th, which is a Sunday. And I'm kind of surprised they're able to play on Sunday, but I'm not going to get too much into that just because this isn't a rules and regulations show. This is a volleyball show, and we don't care if and when and how they're playing. Anyway, so Notre Dame concludes its non-conference schedule on September 17th and September 19th as they take on Ohio State. The first matchup will be in South Bend, while the second matchup will be on... Well, and that first matchup is on Friday, while the second matchup will be on Sunday, and it'll be at Columbus, Ohio. That's going to be a very fun matchup. I think Ohio State is going to be just as good as they were last year, and Notre Dame returns quite a good amount of players. And they have some good transfer players. Like, they just officially signed Lauren Tarnoff, who transferred from the University of Miami, which is quite the big pickup. I've seen her play. She's quite phenomenal, and she had herself quite the volleyball career at Mater Dei High School after she played a couple of years at Notre Dame of Sherman Oaks. So, there's that. Then Notre Dame kicks off its conference schedule at home against Florida State. For Florida State, I think that's going to be a very underrated matchup right there. Everyone kind of underestimates Notre Dame. Or, I'm sorry, not Notre Dame, Florida State. But I think Florida State could give Notre Dame a run for their money, especially after Florida State beat Notre Dame last year. So, there's that little matchup. And then on October 1st, Notre Dame will travel to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech. Then on October 3rd, Notre Dame hits the road to South Carolina to take on Clemson. Then Notre Dame returns home on October 8th to take on Syracuse, and will also have a home game on October 10th against Boston College. Then on October 15th, Notre Dame will hit the road again to North Carolina to take on Wake Forest. And then Notre Dame will hit the road to Virginia in Blacksburg to take on Virginia Tech. Then Notre Dame has a big-time matchup. So now the schedule gets a little real after they face Virginia Tech, as they'll head back home to South Bend to take on Pitt. That's going to be a fun matchup. With the talent that Pitt has and with the talent that Notre Dame has, I would not be shocked if that went 5 sets. And then Notre Dame will remain home to take on the University of Virginia, which should be another great matchup. And that's going to be on October 24th. On October 29th, Notre Dame will hit the road to North Carolina for not one, not two, but 3 North Carolina matchups. The first matchup will be against Duke on October 29th. Then on November 5th, Notre Dame hits the road back to North Carolina to Chapel Hill to take on UNC. And then on November 7th, Notre Dame will stay in North Carolina to take on North Carolina State in Raleigh. And then after that one little matchup against North Carolina State, Notre Dame will head back home to take on North Carolina State again on November 12th. Then on November 15th, Notre Dame will play University of Louisville at the Purcell Pavilion, which is in South Bend, Indianapolis. Then Notre Dame will still stay at home against Virginia Tech on November 21st. And then Notre Dame will close off the regular season, with a 2-game road trip. Their first being against Florida State, as they'll play them in Tallahassee on November 24th. Then Notre Dame closes off the season in Louisville to take on Louisville on November 26th, which I imagine that's a Saturday. But if November 24th is a... Oh no, that's a Friday, I'm sorry. So Gina says she's going to grab dinner, and she's listening in, and she says, I'm having a great show. Thanks, Gina. So that's pretty much Notre Dame's schedule right there. The one thing I'll knock about Notre Dame's schedule is I wish they'd play Pitt twice. I would love to see them play Pitt twice, because I think that is probably the best matchup of the conference. I also approve of them playing Louisville twice and Florida State twice, and it must be a regional thing for Duke. But at the same time, I also would have liked to see them play that high-octane matchup between Pitt. And that's a great... As we all saw last year when the two teams met for the first time, it was a 5-set thriller. So we'll see what happens with Notre Dame and Pitt. But I think Notre Dame is going to have themselves quite the season this upcoming year. With the amount of talent they return, I think they can make some noise. They return Zoe Nunez, Charlie Nigo, Caroline Muth. They brought in Lauren Tarnoff. They have Lindsay Miller and Aubrey Hamilton who have a season of experience. They also returned Hattie Monson, who I think was the Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC, if I'm not mistaken. Or she was the Freshman of the Year. Regardless, she had herself quite the freshman year, and she got to be on the U.S. training team. So there was that. I think it was the U.S. collegiate training team, but I digress. She was on a U.S. team. So all in all, this Notre Dame team is going to be very talented, and I think they could turn the ACC on its ear. That's a little bit of a big statement from me, but I really think Notre Dame has the talent on their team, and I don't think anyone's going to sleep on this Notre Dame team. So that's going to be that for my schedule breakdowns, as we are an hour into the show. We're going to take ourselves a quick little break. When we come back, we've got... Well, actually, no. Let's see if there's an update on April Ross and Alex Kleinman. And there isn't, because reasons. And I am sad face. Why do you gotta do this to me, NBC? We'll see if I can get an update on this, and then if I can't, then I can't. But if I can, then cool. And I can't. So, sorry y'all. I'll find an update as soon as possible, and then when I do, I will be there to give you all the update. And if I can't, then I can't. But if I can, then hooray verily. Okay, so I just got word that that the U.S. pair, Alex Kleinman and April Ross, defeated whatchamacallit for they secured the win as they won the second set 21-19. So apologies if the update came a lot later than expected, but April Ross and Alex Kleinman have advanced to the semifinals. So congratulations to the A team of USA. Actually, hold on. One more time. Let's give a round of applause for April Ross and Alex Kleinman. Alright, now we're going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break. So when we come back, we'll try to get a little recap of that match as Alex Kleinman defeated Ludwig and Kozuch 21-19, 21-19. And then we also have transfer news, and then I'll send you all on your way. So you're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after these.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give ya what you want, here to give ya what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And we are back with Set Point. You can check out all of our amazing shows right here on iSports Radio. We have many streaming platforms you can listen off of, such as iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Podcast Addict. The list goes on, and Spreaker mainly. As you can check out all of our amazing shows on those platforms, such as this one. Like, some of our shows are also on Spotify as well, and this one is surprisingly on iHeartRadio. Like I said last week, I didn't expect Set Point to take off so much as it did from September 30th, 2019. So, you can check out all of our amazing shows on those streaming platforms. We have shows dedicated to football, basketball. We even have shows dedicated to cities such as Chicago, Northern California, which is actually a region, but I digress. And then we also have another regional show dedicated to the Northwest, which is basically like Seattle and like Washington and Oregon and whatnot. And we also even have a show that's dedicated to wine and sports. So definitely do check out all of our amazing shows on iSports Radio. They'll be sure to knock your socks off. And you can check out this show as well every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. Though I can somewhat imagine that it might change just because football season is coming back. And I'll have to compete with football season, which really stinks, but I digress. Anyway, second half of the show is underway. Before I went on a break, I just want to give y'all the quick, in case you missed it, that April Ross and Alex Kleinman of the United States defeated the pair from Germany, which, again, I'm blanking on their name. It was Ludwig and Kozuch in 2 sets. So they advanced to the semifinals, which is awesome stuff. So congratulations to April Ross and Alex Kleinman, and a great tournament run to Ludwig and Kozuch of Germany. So anyway, they're the only beach pair that remains alive. So just gotta give you that quick little update. Now let's go into the transfer news. So there'll also be like returning senior segments. This whole college volleyball transfer portal segment is basically courtesy of College V-Ball Transfers, which is on Instagram and on Twitter. So that's where you can find them. So the first transfer, as I unfortunately didn't get to last week because I had an episode special because it was the 100th episode. So Morgan Johnson is transferring from BYU to play at the University of American, as she is a 6-foot outside hitter and she's a redshirt freshman. So good, big loss for the Cougars, but a nice little pickup for American, as they'll look to utilize her in the best way possible. Then we have Dominique Washington, who is transferring from Georgia Tech to Florida A&M. She is a 5'11 outside hitter, and she is a graduate student. So, again, she'll be going from Power 5 conference to non-Power 5 conference. So that's a good little change of pace. Then on the beach side, we have Cami Sanchez, who I actually am familiar with. She will be transferring from UCLA to Grand Canyon to play beach volleyball. She is a 5'10 beach volleyball player, and she's a graduate student. And believe it or not, my guest last week, Craig Pizzanti, coached her and her sisters in indoor volleyball. So that's great stuff right there. So good luck to Cami Sanchez. And once again, I gotta give a shout out to Craig Pizzanti for being a guest last week on Set Point. He really came in clutch, kind of like Derek Fisher did for the Lakers against the San Antonio Spurs back in 2004. But I digress. So anyway, we have Mariah Buss, who is transferring from Wichita State to Omaha. She is a 6-foot outside hitter, and she is a freshman, so she's going to be giving Omaha quite a good amount of firepower. I think Omaha is underrated for its conference, and I think they could turn the conference on their ear, but we'll have to see. Then we have Jenna Florig, who is transferring from UConn to Portland State. She's a 6'1" middle blocker, and she's a graduate student. As for those that don't know, UConn and the entire Ivy League sports did not have seasons last year, so she is transferring to Portland State. I don't even know what's going to befall the fate of the Ivy League. I don't know if they're going to have a season this year, or if they're not going to have a season. All in all, I think they should have a season. But if not, then I'm going to cry. And you don't want to hear me cry on air. I'm kidding. Anyway, so next up we have Katie Clark, who is a 6'3" middle blocker who is transferring from TCU to Penn State. That is big right there. And she's only a junior, so she's going to provide a lot of good height and firepower for the Nittany Lions, especially since Penn State lost quite a bit to transfers. But they also gained quite a bit as well. So all in all, I don't think the Nittany Lions are going anywhere, so there's that. Then we have Yenny Murillo, who is transferring from Grand Canyon as she's going to Louisiana Lafayette. So she's transferring to the Ragin' Cajuns. And I have to say it like that, just because if you say the Ragin' Cajuns, it sounds so plain. But if you say the Ragin' Cajuns, it just brings that emphasis on it. Anyway, Murillo is a 6-foot outside hitter, and she's a graduate student. So here's hoping Yenny Murillo will provide great depth for Louisiana Lafayette. Then we have Skylar Buckley, who will be staying in the SEC, but she will be transferring from Mississippi State to Missouri. She is a 5'9" setter, and she's only a freshman. So with the amount of talent that Missouri has lost, this is kind of some good news for them. I don't know if it's going to impact them a whole lot, but it's a setter, and as we know with Team USA's women's volleyball team, you can never have too many setters. So this is kind of good for Missouri. And then we have Mariah Mitchell, who is transferring from Western Illinois to Iowa State. Mitchell is a 6-foot opposite, and she's only a junior. So she will be going from non-Power 5 to Power 5, as Iowa State will look to make the NCAA tournament after they did not do so last season. And then we jump to the beach side of things. We have Sunny Villapando, who is transferring from Stanford. Gina, I'm sorry if I gotta say this, but Sunny Villapando, the AVCA All-American and the Stanford all-time wins leader, is transferring from Stanford to USC, the University of Southern California. So she is staying in the Pac-12, but she's going from NorCal to SoCal to play for the reigning NCAA champions. So, sorry, Gina, but Sunny Villapando is heading to USC, so I wish her the best. And next up we have, back into the indoor side of things, we have Paige Calvin, who is transferring from Sacramento State as she'll be heading to Cal State Bakersfield. So she's also going from NorCal to SoCal, which is kind of funny, as Calvin is a 5'7" libero, and she's only a junior. And I forgot to mention that Villapando is a 5'8" beach volleyball player, and she's a grad student. So she's basically going to make the most out of her final year as she'll look to try to win the NCAA championship with USC. So there's that. And then lastly, when it comes to the most recent transfers, we actually had this just come in just recently. We have Grayson Sherpick, who is transferring from TCU, as she'll be staying in the Lone Star State, but this time she'll be playing for Houston. She is a 5'10" outside hitter, and she's only a freshman, so she will be going from Power 5 to non-Power 5, as she'll look to try to find her way in Houston. So there's that, and that's all the transfers that recently have been. It doesn't look like there was too many transfers from what I saw. Anyway, now we have the returning seniors for certain teams. So we'll start with LSU. So LSU returns Taylor Bannister, Hannah Brister, I think her name is Reagan Cianciulli, Emmeline Walters, and Kylie DeBerg, who transferred from Missouri. She was only going to play beach volleyball, but then she decided to play indoor Veebs as well. So that's quite a number of returning players, and with Kylie DeBerg, LSU could, hence the word could, make things interesting in the SEC. But I wouldn't hold their breath, considering they have to play Kentucky twice, and then they also have to play Florida, and the entire SEC is going to be very tough, so we'll see what happens. But again, I think Kentucky might be the favorite, if not Florida. Tennessee's also improved as well, and then Missouri's semi-good as well, so can't give them too much credit, but they should be nice. Anyway, now we have Baylor with their returning players. So their returning players include Yasonia Presley, Hannah Sedgwick, and Presley Anderson. And they also have a newcomer in Avery Skinner. I think I said Maddie Skinner early on, but it's Avery Skinner. If not, then I was right before. And then a player that's not returning is Lack Harper or Lacey Harper. Either way, these are your Baylor returners, and they also have quite a bit of returners from last year's team, and they also had some freshmen who decided to opt out from their high school season and graduate early to be on and train with the current Baylor team. Unfortunately, they were ineligible, but that's because they graduated early, and they can't play because they have not been graduated at that time. So there's that. Then we jump over to Louisville. Their two noteworthy players of returning are Tori Dilfer, their setter, and Anna Stevenson, their middle blocker. The players that aren't returning are Alexis Hamilton and Piper Rowe, which is kind of a loss for them. They are the reigning ACC champions, and I think it's going to be a lot tougher for them to repeat. Part of the reason why they didn't have too many losses was because they didn't get to play too many matches. Their only matches they really got to play were the latter part of their season, which they... Keep in mind, they got to get their matches out of the way, such as like Notre Dame and Pitt and Syracuse and Boston College. Like, they got the tough matches out of the way, and they only got to play, I think they only played Georgia Tech once. And they didn't even get to play their second match against Notre Dame, which I was so looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I think one of Notre Dame's players tested positive for COVID, and that had to, cancel the match, which really sucked. I was really looking forward to that Notre Dame-Louisville matchup. But we'll see. So there's that for those returning players. Then we jump over to Hawaii, which didn't even get to have a season last year. I talked a little about Hawaii as their returning players include Kira Hanawahine, I think that's how it's pronounced, Brooke Van Sickle, and Skylar Williams. A player that's not returning is Jolie Rasmussen. So Rasmussen. So Jolie Rasmussen is not returning for Hawaii, but Kira Hanawahine, Brooke Van Sickle, and Skylar Williams are returning. So there's that. Then we jump on over to Weber State, as I didn't think I'd see this team in terms of the returning seniors category, but their returning players include Rylan Adams, Ashlyn Power, and Sam Scheisse. Adams is an outside hitter, Power is their setter, and Scheisse is their middle blocker. So we'll see if they could win the Big Sky championship yet again. So that's the Purple Rain right there. And then we have USC, as for those that don't remember, USC didn't make the NCAA tournament last season because of a lot of unfortunate turn of events, but I digress. So their returning players include Brooke Botkin. So I didn't know she actually announced that she would come back, and no one really told me that she was going to come back, but they're returning. But Brooke Botkin is back, which is one of their All-Americans. Then Candace Denny is back, along with Sarah Nelson, their setter. And then some newcomers include Paige Hammonds, who is an outside hitter who transferred from Florida. Shannon Scully, an outside hitter who I hear is going to be libero, if I'm not mistaken. She was actually playing on the collegiate training team, the Team USA collegiate training team, to be the libero, and she's listed as outside hitter, but I wouldn't be shocked if she was the libero, as USC has kind of had the libero problem ever since Victoria Garrick graduated. But that's for another day. And then also in terms of newcomers, they have Sabrina Smith, who is listed as a middle blocker. She transferred from UCLA, which is kind of funny, but c'est la vie. And also one more player to include in terms of the newcomer list is Mia Tuaniga. I know she isn't a senior, but she is very talented. She was in the top 50 in terms of like recruits back in the class of 2020 class. And she, like I said, she originally attended Long Beach State, but transferred to USC because I don't know why. She never really gave a specific reason on why she transferred from Long Beach State to USC, considering her family has been loyal to USC, or not loyal to USC, Long Beach State. Her older brother Josh her oldest brother went to Long Beach State, and her older brother Josh went and played for Long Beach State. So it's kind of puzzling to see Mia transferring to USC, but I guess she wants to break the mold. So, or maybe she wants to have a better chance at winning the NCAA championship. Not that I don't think that if she was at Long Beach State, she wouldn't have a good chance. I just think that maybe she was thinking that USC would have given her a better chance, considering they would return quite a bit of players, and they have a good amount of transfer players coming in. And they also have Brooke Botkin. USC, I guess, she's not a senior. This player isn't a senior. I forget what her name is, but one of their players isn't returning, as she is not going to be returning. I don't remember her name. I know she's a middle blocker. I know her name is like Ola, but I kind of digress. Regardless, I will find her name. I promise you I will find her name. And also, just to note something, that Julian Welsh-White is the new director of operations for USC Women's Volleyball, as Alexandra Greika is going to be signing, or will not be returning to USC, as she will be signing a contract to play professionally in Poland. So she is actually Polish, so it makes more sense, and she'll be getting the chance to play. And I imagine she'll take like hybrid classes, like online classes. So that's that for USC. I've been rambling on about them too much. Now we jump to Purdue. Purdue pretty much returns its entire team, and their notable players that return are Caitlin Newton and Jenna Otek, who I imagine are their super seniors or their redshirt seniors, or their seniors that were granted a 5th year of eligibility because of COVID. So Purdue is looking quite threatening on paper. Like, they return most of their players, and it's only a matter of time before and they also bring in their new class of 2021. So that's another thing right there. So I imagine Purdue is going to have another deep NCAA tournament run, and they could maybe challenge like Wisconsin, Nebraska, Penn State, Minnesota for the Big Ten championship title, but we'll have to see. And then lastly, in terms of the returning seniors, is Marquette, as their returning seniors include Caitlin Lines, Savannah Rennie, who transferred from Cal last season, Hope Wirch, and Taylor Wolf. So Marquette, like I said, is that under-the-radar team. They and Creighton don't get enough credit just because they don't play in a Power 5 conference, but they're that consistent two-headed monster of their conference, and one of those teams more times than not makes the NCAA tournament, and sometimes has a deep NCAA tournament run, or a sneaky good NCAA tournament run. Like, Creighton was kind of the lone exception because they lost in the first round. They lost in the round of 48, because, again, it was a 48-team tournament, and they didn't have the round of 64, then the round of 32. They just had round 1, then the round of 32, then the round of 16, so on and so forth. So that's pretty much that for all of the returning seniors and whatnot. That's pretty much that for all the transfer news. One more thing is I do have to give a shout out to college volleyball transfers, as they now have a partner. Their partner is the Transfer ZN. I think it's like Zzen or something. But the Transfer ZN is their new partner when it comes to tracking everything college volleyball. And it says, transferring just got a little bit easier thanks to the Transfer ZN. Athletes of all sports, schools, and levels are now able to build their online profiles to help connect with coaches when they enter the transfer portal. Make sure to check out their new website and give them a follow. So, I think, it's the Transfer Zone, so I don't know why they call it the Transfer ZN, but I guess that's short for zone. Why don't you just want to spell it the darn word zone? Like, why you gotta make this tough for me? The nerve of you, Transfer Zone, as my boy Marcus would say. But a big shout out to college volleyball transfers. Maybe the Transfer Zone will be a sponsor for iSports Radio sometime soon. Maybe. We'll see. But that is going to do it for that segment of college volleyball transfers in women's volleyball. And that's going to do it for this episode of Set Point. I appreciate you all tuning in. I appreciate you all bearing with me. And I'll try to get more like match recaps throughout the Olympic rounds with like the quarterfinals and the semifinals, and when it comes to like beach volleyball and whatnot, I'll try to get those in as well. But that's going to do it for this week's episode of Set Point. I appreciate you all tuning in. Next week is most likely going to be a recap of the Olympics, as the beach knockout round and the indoor knockout round is going to conclude. Then we will also, I imagine the AVP will be starting up pretty soon as well, so there's probably going to be a little talk about that. And then save the date. In 2 more weeks, which is August 16th, that's going to be the end of Season 2 of Set Point, and we'll be jumping into Season 3, which I know people don't really like care for like Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, or anything like that. But I'm kind of that guy who likes having a Season 1 and a Season 2 of Set Point. So that's cool right there. So without any further delay, it is that time, ladies and gentlemen, to drop that beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Once again, thank you all for tuning in to this week's episode of Set Point. If you're listening live, I appreciate you. If you're listening on the playback, I appreciate you. If you're listening in the wee hours of the morning, I appreciate you. And if you're listening at any time in the world, I definitely appreciate you. Big shout out to the chat room who was there chatting it up, such as Adam Karnick, Gina G, and Marcus Losgrid. I appreciate you all tuning in for this week's episode of Set Point. Once again, I apologize for if I was thinking that I wasn't going to do this show today, but I decided to do it because I could go without watching the April Ross and Alex Kleinman match. And look what happened. They actually won. So I'll be keeping more tabs on them when it comes to the semifinals, but that is going to do it for today and this week. I will see you all Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. You all have yourselves a great rest of the night. Have yourselves a great rest of the week. If you are going outside to the beach, wear sunscreen. And if you aren't vaccinated, please get vaccinated. I don't care what it takes. Just get vaccinated. For everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have a great rest of the night, everybody. And I will see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Peace!